hockey friends and families around the world, and welcome to another episode of Our Kids Play Hockey. I'm Lee Elias, joined by Mike Benelli today. Christy Casciano Burns is on assignment, and today's episode is one of the ones that will hit every locker room, car ride, kitchen table, anywhere you communicate with your family, your hockey players, your coaches, the people involved in the game, because our guest today is Jen Fry, a sports educator, communication strategist, an inclusion consultant who works with some of the biggest organizations in sports and education, from the NCAA to ESPN, a couple names you might have heard of, and the NFL, another name you might have heard of. Her company, Jen Fry Talks, helps athletes, coaches, and parents understand how communication and awareness can transform not just performance, but connection, which is a major part of youth sports, whether you realize it or not. In hockey, we talk a lot about skills, shooting, skating, systems, but the way we talk to each other might be the most important skill of all. So today we're going to break down how communication shapes confidence, culture, and belonging in youth hockey. Jen, welcome to Our Kids Play Hockey.
I'm laced up and ready to go.
That's a great way to start the show. No,
yeah.
Jen, look, I'm excited that you're here because, we talk about it a lot on the show, development, right? Just the word development. And we don't talk enough about beyond the hockey skills of development. That's something in the culture we're trying to break, because the ROI on youth sports really is those life lessons that you're learning, right? And you've said that communication is culture. I love that statement. I want to know from your perspective, what does great communication look like on a youth hockey team between players, parents, and coaches? It's a broad question, but let's start there and we'll break it down.
I think that's a fascinating thing, because we have to think about how society looks at these ideas of quote unquote hard skills versus soft skills, or technical skills in sport versus the soft skills. And there's such an emphasis on the technical skills and not emphasis on the soft skills. But let's be honest, the soft skills are the ones that could destroy the team. The lack of communication, the lack of giving or receiving feedback, the lack of understanding the role, all those things are these soft skills that can just destroy a team.
Amen.
So I would say, kind of from this perspective of, you said the importance of conflict.
No, communication on a team in general.
The importance of communication.
Yeah,
so I would say, it's critical in helping these athletes understand how to advocate for themselves. I've seen so many times people saying, my kid is on the bench mad because they're not playing. And I'm like, well, have they asked why they're not playing? Well, no. Well, they're afraid of repercussions. I'm like, what repercussions? They're already sitting the bench. Like, what other ones are you worried will happen? And I think sometimes they blow it up. And I'm like, we have to kind of narrow it down and ask, why are we afraid to ask the coach why we're not playing?
Right.
In reality. And so I think it's so important in helping develop these athletes. Like I said, giving and receiving feedback, self-advocating, being able to stand up for themselves, be able to set boundaries around what they believe is right or wrong of what they're doing, being able to advocate using their voice. It's so important. I think when we talk about communication related to parents, I think this is a harder thing for them to understand, that communication for them means taking a back seat while their kids learn their communication skills. And that's a hard one, because parents want to jump in and be like, I can solve it. I'm mama bear, dad bear, whatever it is. I want to solve it. And a part of communication skills is allowing your kids to figure it out, and it be really hard, meaning they go and talk to a coach and they just aren't able to figure out what they want to say. And they come back frustrated and they're like, well, coach said I suck. And we've seen this all right before. And then it's like, did coach really say that? Well, no, he said this, this, and this. Okay, well, maybe we need to learn how to ask better questions or state more what we want. And so I think communication skills in that way for parents, allowing the kids to figure it out, I think is important, so critical. And I think on the third part with the coaches, I think this is important for coaches to understand how critical transparency is. And transparency in the aspect of saying, this is the skill that you need to work on to see court time, ice time, whatever. Like, this is the skill, and not hiding behind you just need to get better. Like all these kind of fake comments of these are the specific things you need to get better at, and understanding that even if you get better at it, you still might not get the time you want, and be able to have that honest, true comment And some of these coaches don't want to have that transparency, which then frustrates the parents and then frustrates the athletes. So I think it's kind of all three of those buckets.
It's so funny. I think every conversation we have about hockey and failures of a team's success always comes down to communication. Always. It always breaks down to it wasn't communicated well. It wasn't communicated properly. It wasn't communicated honestly. It wasn't communicated with education behind it.
It wasn't communicated. Period.
Right. But I think what Jen brings up is the anxiety a lot of us have as parents, right, and as coaches, that sometimes as a coach, especially at the youth hockey, we're not talking about the great communicators of the NFL and the NBA and the NHL. We're talking about, the reason these guys are great communicators, like when you look at a Pete Carroll or something like that, that this person is a superior communicator because of their success. A John Cooper in hockey is a superior communicator because you could tell because they're successful with their players. I think at the youth hockey level, and Jen, maybe you could talk about this a little bit about like what can we do as parents to support our players going in with a coach that as a parent, like all of us have a lot of us have young coaches. They're guys or girls that are just out of college. They're just beginning their coaching career. Maybe they've never been communicated to great, in a great way. Like, what can we do as a parent to coach our player to go in there and I don't know, I don't even know the word, give a leading question to get the answer you want out. Because I agree with you. The most frustrating thing I could have as a parent is my son coming back and saying, well, what did the coach think about you? Oh, he said I'm doing fine. I just got to work harder. Well, what do you mean you got to work harder? You're clearly not doing fine. You're on the fourth line. So if you were doing fine, you wouldn't be on the fourth line. So what is it? What can we do as parents to help coach our players to come back with answers that are that we could actually are substantive where we could use them?
Yeah. So I think the very first thing that I say is parents need to journal. And I say that because it helps you get your feelings out, right? Because what happens is like, go ask why you're not playing. We need to know. And parents are upset. And right, because let's take a step back, Mike. Y'all are spending so much money, so much time. And then when the expectations or results aren't occurring, then that is leading it, right? I've been seeing in some parent forums where parents are like, I'm donating plasma a few times a month. We're looking at taking out another mortgage. And I'm dropping my kid off for practice and going and working a second job. There is a lot of angst, feeling, expectations behind it. And I understand that. And I think sometimes that leads the conversation or pushes the athlete. And so I think that's why the first thing is parents need to journal. Get your feelings out. I'm pissed, I'm raged, I'm whatever it is. Write them down so that you can get them out. So you're not using your feelings to push your kid into having the conversation.
Yeah, I love that.
Because sometimes the kid doesn't care if they're the fourth line, the fifth line, the 18th line. They just like being on the team, right? They just love it. They're with their friends. They don't care. But the parents are like, I'm having to work a second job. You need to go figure out why you're not playing. So that would be my very first thing, is that parents are journaling. The second thing is, what do your kids really want? Are they okay being on the fourth line? Are they okay sitting the bench, knowing that the third backup setter, the third point guard, are they okay with that? And having that real conversation of I'm not mad or frustrated. We just need to know if you're okay with that, then we have to be okay with it. And sometimes there's a disconnect. Parents are not okay with the kids being okay with it. And so having that real conversation. Then I think the third thing is asking the kid, what is it you want? What is it you want? I want to play. Well, what is it you mean you want to play? Do you want to play any position? Or do you want to play this position? What is it you want? I want to play outside. I want to play goalie. I want to play whatever it is. And then having them write down questions specifically to the skill. This is not a closed book test. You do not have to go in there memorizing. You can come in there literally with a pad of paper of here are the questions I have. What skill sets do I need to specifically develop?
Jen, I love this.
Sorry, so go ahead, Lee, but you're asking specific questions that don't shape the work harder, be better, but specific skill-based questions.
No, yeah, I'm sorry for interrupting you.
Okay.
I'll say where we're going here. What I love about this is, and I like to pinpoint this for the audience, is the skill sets, right? So being a great skater, being a great puck handler, having a great shot does not translate to the office, right? But communication does, right? So I think in part of that journaling or even that reflection for parents and coaches play a role in this too. This is not on the kids, is to look at, okay, my kid is not in a position they want to be in. That is a life situation.
Period.
I'd say
Period.
100% chance you're going to run into that in your life a few times. In your 40s, it's every 15 minutes.
Yes.
So that's the skill set that you need to work on. Well, mom, dad, I'm scared to talk to the coach. Okay, good. That's a normal reaction to have to talk to someone of authority. Let's dissect that. Now, I always tell my kids too, when they have to talk, if you're really nervous, let's write out what you want to say.
Yep.
Right. And I will say this, coaches, in hockey, we have a thing called the 24-hour rule, the 48-hour rule. I know many sports have it where a certain amount of time has to go by. But this is my opinion. For coaches, the door should always be open for players to have a conversation.
Always.
If it's brought to them the correct way. And to be fair, I don't know many coaches who don't do that anymore. Okay. But you should have the skill set.
Can I pause you real quickly?
Yeah, please.
The one thing you said was the correct way. Here is where I will kind of give a baby pushback, because a part of us training them is for them to figure out what the correct way even looks like.
Right.
And so it might be they come and they're like real mad, and it's up to us for coaches to help say, I understand you want to have this conversation, but we can't have this dialogue with you yelling or crying
100%.
or screaming. Right. So that's like an aspect of like, how do we help them? Because we're also the test ground for them learning the correct way to advocate for themselves.
Right. Well, and look, as a coach, I'll give a great example. I had a young player on the bench yesterday who was fighting everything that I said. All right. Good kid, but fighting everything that I said. And, a younger version of me probably would have got pretty mad as a coach.
Yeah.
But the me now realizes, okay, something outside of hockey is bothering this athlete. So I kind of took a deep breath and I sat down. This is during the game. And I said, hey, are you having a bad day? Did you have a bad day? And man, it was the doors open. Yeah, my mom is yelling at me and my family this and contention. And so I said to this player, I said, oh, I just kind of nodded. And look, here's another side note here, right? Her family business is not my business. All right. So I don't comment directly on, well, hey, your mom shouldn't say that. I don't do things like that. Okay. Don't. And coaches, you should probably not do that. Okay.
No.
What I did do is say, well, listen, that sounds really hard. All right. But right now you're on the bench with your team and with me, and this is the world for you. And I want you to learn how to leave that stress away. I said, this is a place of peace for you. This is sanctuary for you. And, there was one more little, and I said, listen, I understand you're frustrated, but we're in a game right now. And I want you to be with us. The player won like the player of the game at the end of the game. And I'm not saying it's because of me at all. I'm saying this player was able to take what I said and she turned it around, not me. Yeah. Like I just maybe opened the door for her to say, oh, I'm out of my mind right now. Right. I'm not present right now. But that communication changed the trajectory of this player's game. That's coaching to me. All right. And it had nothing to do with ice hockey. Right. So my point is that, I don't know if a lesson per se was learned by her there, but the idea was we had a good conversation. We communicated. That's the purpose of this, right? We took the conflict, we moved it away, we got present with the situation. Now, where I'm going with this is that that's an opportunity. The player was egregious, clearly had an issue. We moved the ego out of the way. We had a communicative forum here, and we talked. Coaches, you should always be available for your players to have a conversation with you. Right. And if a player comes to you and says something the wrong way, which can happen, great example. Yeah. Why the hell am I not getting more ice time? I did everything that game. Okay. Coaches, you got two choices. Now you can yell at that kid back, or you can say, hey, listen, I understand you're asking for more ice time. Do you think the way you presented this question to me is going to make me want to give you more ice time?
Yeah, period.
Right. Now can you rephrase the question? Right. That's a life lesson. All right. Yes. Because the coach, Jen, I'm going to throw it back to you. I promise. The coach now has become safe. You're teaching, right? So when they have a job in 10 years, then they go, why am I not being paid more money? Like, okay, you think I'm going to pay you more money now?
You think you're going to have a job now?
Yeah. Good luck with that approach.
I think the thing about it is that coaches and parents sometimes forget they're the testing ground for these kids.
Right. That's
like if we want them to advocate for themselves when we're not around, they have to test it out. You all know this is the hardest skill ever, to be able to advocate for yourself in really hard times when you're frustrated, mad, sad, whatever it is. And they have to test it out. This is that difference between soft and hard skills. You all are doing how much puck work. You're doing all this practicing. Why aren't we practicing with this skill set and giving our athletes the place to be able to figure it out, their words and how they're going to feel? It's like, hey, Mike, I understand right now you're really frustrated, but this is not the way to talk to someone. Right. Why don't we take a deep breath and let's come back to it? But that also takes, Lee, I don't know about you, but young Jen Fry as a coach was a hothead. Right? Young Jen Fry was a hothead. Surprise, surprise. Right. And you have to learn, you can't hothead to a 13-year-old. Like you can't do that. And it takes some self-realization, some emotional regulation to be able to say, like, they're going to test you. The words that they're going to use, how they're going to say it, their tone, body language. And you have to be able to be the ground where you're like, this is not the way to do it. Right. I want to have the conversation with you, but not like this. Right. I understand you're frustrated, but this is not the way to do it.
I do have to say this too. I agree with everything you said. And I want to make sure the coaches have a clear understanding. What we're saying is also not you have to be a pushover. I want to make sure that there's a clear understanding of that, right? Because you do have to maintain discipline. If someone gets out of order, you remove them from the situation. But saying to somebody, hey, why don't you meet me where I'm at? Or why don't I meet you where you're at? Or let's come converse here. That's not getting pushed over. All right. So I'm just saying there is a line, right, coaches? And you have to understand that line. But Jen, like you, I was a hothead as a young coach. It took me a long time to kind of find that place of balance. I think that just comes with reps.
Well, right? And also like the coaches, they see the parents and they know the kids getting it from the parents.
100%.
And so like they have to.
We all know. We all know
like they know. Yeah, like we know. And that's the thing. It's not trying to like take a knock on someone's parenting or anything like that. But we see where they get that. And so it's like, this is where both sides need to help them out. Both sides need to maintain emotional regulation for these young people. Right. Both sides need to be able to have the conversation. Both sides need to be able to help themselves advocate for themselves. Both sides. It's a two-party system right here.
And I got to say this too, like again, action items for coaches and parents. To me, this starts the first second the team is together. You have to have a conversation with the parents and with the kids. And I've sat in a lot of these coaches kind of conversations, and they usually go like, don't talk to me after the game, 24 hours, equalized time. We're going to do this. And I wish more coaches would say, I want your kids to advocate for themselves. Yes. I want to talk to your kids. Right. If there is a bullying issue or something severe, parents, the door is open for you to come talk to me. I understand that. If your kid is in mental health danger or physical danger, we can talk. If your kid has a problem or you have a problem, I'd like your kid to be the one who speaks to me. And then make it a joint venture. We need to help your kids advocate for themselves. You set that up from the first second. You've changed the whole dynamic of the team. Jen, you said communication is culture.
Yes.
Right? It starts from the first second. If you try doing this mid-season, good luck. Right?
Well, many people think it's reactive because of something someone did. Right. So now if you try and do it in the middle of the season, everyone's going to be talking to each other, trying to figure out who was the reason that this was done.
Right. Great point. Mike, did you want to, I'm taking a lot of the oxygen today, Mike.
No. I mean, because it makes total sense. I mean, I'm just reflecting kind of on, it's kind of very, I think parents can relate to these conversations because it's very much like school. Where if you never go to a parent teacher conference, you don't have any interaction with your kids, then how are you helping advocate for those kids? And I think, but I think at the other side of it too, I think coaches often take advantage of parents that aren't confrontational. Like it's almost like the squeaky wheel. It always gets kind of attuned to, right? Because the parent like I'm a parent that I just tell my son, you go talk to the coach. I'll be standing right next to him. If depending on his age, right, and depending on where my kids were in their age group. But I'm like, listen, you have to advocate for yourself. You have to have this conversation. You have to be the one that the coach has to relate to and talk to. Again, this is like 16, 17, 18-year-olds, not a 9-year-old. But I think that us as parents, though, you do have to be a little aggressive as far as asking for that communication to happen. Because if you don't, it just never will. Like the only people that will get responded to are the kids that the parent that's screaming and yelling from the stands, and the kid that the coach is always, trying to help, as opposed to the kid that says nothing, right? I don't know, Jen. Do you think do those kids get lost in some of these communication systems because everybody's like, well, the kid, he must not be having any issue because he's nice and quiet. And I'm like, yeah, but we want every parent to be quiet. Like I want all the parents, I want all the parents not to be confrontational, but I think what you're saying is though, if you don't set that up from the beginning as part of your culture, that, that you have to, as a parent, I don't mind you coming to me. Like I want you to come to me. Because you're dealing with a lot of different parents. I mean, what would be your advice to a parent that says, I'm completely hands off, my kid is unhappy, but I'm not the parent that's going to go approach the coach? Like, how do you find a way to advocate for your kid?
So that's a really good multifaceted question. And I think the first thing is you mentioned your kid advocating for themselves at 16, 17, 18, but not at 9 or 10. I would push back and say, why are we not teaching 9 and 10-year-olds to advocate for yourself? For some reason, think about your kids when they were like, up until maybe like 2 or 3. What was their favorite word? No. No, 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 no. They said it all the time. If you went and if someone they didn't like, maybe put their hand on their shoulder, the kid would be like, right? Like ripping their shoulder away. They were very in tune with saying no and boundaries. And somewhere along the line, kids stopped doing that. Maybe it was because just go hug that auntie, go give your grandpa a kiss. I know you don't want to go. Like we started forcing these things on kids that stopped them having body autonomy. So then they stopped advocating for themselves. And I would argue that we should be teaching 6, 7, 8, 9-year-olds how to advocate for themselves. It's you standing next to them, but they got to learn to use those words, because we're not just talking about them advocating for themselves in terms of sport. We're talking about them learning when someone is touching them inappropriately and they have to say no. When someone is saying something to them and they have to learn how to stand up for themselves. We shouldn't be waiting until 16, 17, 18. We should be teaching them that you have to stand up for yourself, to advocate for yourself, to go and talk to your teacher, all these hard things, because these are the micro advocacy that builds on them learning it, but also builds their self-confidence. When we are telling our kids to go and talk to someone and they talk to them and they go through a hard moment and it works out, that's how we build self-confidence. We don't build self-confidence in the parents talking for them all the way up to 16. And now when they're driving and they're out more by themselves and they're going to parties and they're going to situations that can be potentially problematic, now is the time for them to learn how to advocate. It's not going to go well. And that's where I tend to see kids put themselves in really harmful positions because they don't know how to tell a friend, I'm leaving. This is not where I want to be. This is unsafe. I don't feel good about where we're at. And so I would argue that parents stand by the kids, but we got to get them to start learning how to use their voice at a young age. And that means that parents got to let them use their voice at home. We can't tell kids at home, no, don't ask me questions. You're being disrespectful. Don't speak back. Like we can't say all of that stuff and then expect them to advocate for themselves in a really hard position. Right. It doesn't work that way. So we have to figure out how do we help them use their voice. And just to kind of hit on Mike's last question about the kid that does, the parent that's like, I'm hands off. You can be hands off and help your kid prepare to advocate for themselves. It doesn't have to be one or the other.
Yeah, no, and I probably didn't articulate myself well there, but you're absolutely right. Like that's like I would never. What I'm saying is like I wouldn't put my 8 or 9-year-old in a room with a coach by themselves. Where but I might do it with my 17 or 18-year-old. Like if if I have my kid and same thing with a teacher. I think and just a point of reference too for a coach. You should be asking for that parent to be in the room with you as well. Yeah, because safety. Number one is it's very protective of yourself, but also it allows you to use words that you want to use, and the parent knows the kid the best. Leon, we talked about all this. We are our kid's best advocate. Like we are the agent of our kid, so we want to be involved, not to have the conflict piece, but to be able to say, like if my son's name is Arthur, right? Arthur, are you sure you understand what the coach is saying, or that's not the question you had for him originally? Do you want to rephrase that question?
Yeah.
Or, hey, did you mentioned this, so do you want to ask this? Because these are kids, and you're right on with everything. Like, we've got to coach our kids. Write down the question. If you have an issue, go ahead and ask. And I think I see that all the time, from my perspective, working with children. Like, I'm like, listen, I want your parent in here. I want them to hear what I'm saying to you, because they're the ones that, like, it's just like all of us. How was school today? It was fine. What'd you do? Nothing.
Nothing.
But, and then you find out like he got some huge award in school. You don't even know about it, right? So I don't know. So I guess that goes to my other question to you, though, is, from this expectations, having this communication, but in the ideal world here, not having conflict, right? We all want to have these conversations without a fight. And I think, so it's funny, so I require from my coaches in every organization I work with, they have to do 3 progress reports a year, and they have to be a digital version of a progress report to a kid. It's not 7 pages long. It's just player 1. Here's where they fit in with my team. Here's how I think they're reacting to me. And here's what I'd love to see more out of them, right? Mm-hmm. So that goes to them. But you know what the biggest pushback I get from coaches sometimes is them not having the confidence. They'd rather have no conversation than to be proactive to initiate the conversation, because they almost think like, well, that's going to actually initiate the conflict. Yeah. Because before I wasn't saying anything, but now I'm going out of my way to say something. So could you maybe have a conversation about like, how do we, help these athletes and parents communicate, but know that we don't want to invite the conflict if there is none?
So I think the problem is that we can't think that conflict's always bad, and we can't have this idea of not wanting to invite the conflict. I think the thing to think about is normalizing it, is that you're potentially giving hard information to someone and they're going to emote, right? Like, we can't tell a kid that they're not doing well and not expect there to be emote, right? Like, they're going to emote, they're going to have feelings, and you can't separate them. And so the thing to me is to how do we prepare the coaches for this? Like, you think, like, there's a quote that says silent, it's like, let me think here. It's silence. No, I'll have to find the quote, but essentially talking about harmony, and the absence of conflict is not harmony. That's what it is. The absence of conflict is not harmony. And so many people think everything's fine if we don't have conflict. And that's inherently not true. You have 10, 12, 13, 15 completely different personalities. There is going to be conflict all the time sometimes, especially these folks got hormones, they're growing, they're going through middle school, high school. And so we have to kind of stop with the idea of how do we stop conflict from happening, but how do we better prepare ourselves and everyone involved for it? How do we better prepare ourselves? How do we understand it? How do I say, okay, I know I'm writing this really hard thing about Jane or Jimmy, and they're probably going to be frustrated or mad, and I have to be okay with that. So when they come to me and Jimmy's like, I don't understand why I'm not playing, and I can say, I understand that. Let's talk about it. And I am better prepared. And I think that's the thing, is that coaches don't want conflict so bad that when it happens, they're trying to stop it in all ways, versus saying, if I tell Lee he is not probably going to play for a while because his puck handling skills or whatever is not up to par, Lee is probably going to be frustrated with me. And I have to be okay with that. And so you are learning to be okay with giving bad news or hard news and not sitting there like holding it. Because if I tell Lee at the beginning of the season, here is what he is just not to par with, and we have time to work on it, versus I don't want to tell Lee, so I wait. And now there's 2 weeks left in the season, and now I tell him, well, Lee's going to be way more pissed off. Duh. So like we cause the anger because we don't want to give the information, versus I'm telling you, Lee, at the beginning of the season so we can prepare for it, so we can work on it, and helping that way.
I'm laughing for a few reasons. One is the irony of the sports world is the sport is conflict. That's what sport is. It's complete conflict on the ice, on the court, on the field.
Yes.
So it's like we're dealing with it in the games that we're playing. The other thing too is those are interesting examples, Jen, because I've dealt with them all, right? So I've had coaches who have been silent and I'm not playing and I don't know why, and it is horrible. It's a horrible thing, and all I want is feedback. And I'm pissed because I'm not playing. But you know what? I'd feel a little better if I knew what I was supposed to be doing. So that's number one. Number two, and Mike, you're bringing up great points here. You know, what I do as a coach, and there's two sides of this, right? Is I take a lot of solace in the understanding that, look, I'm doing the best I can as a coach, right? I think coaches need to get in touch with that. If you're doing the best you can and there's conflict. And you know what? Here's the thing with conflict. Everyone listening, you may be wrong. You may be on the incorrect side of that. You have to be okay with that too. Okay. Because if you're doing the best you can, you're doing the best you can. Look, I'll give you a high level example for this audience, right? I have coaching positions now where I can be fired as the coach. Okay. So when you're a volunteer coach, you're not getting fired unless you do something really, really bad. You're volunteering. They're happy you're there. I'm in a position I can be fired for wrong decisions, like losses, right? The record. So you want to talk about pressure and how to compartmentalize it. I have to communicate with my athletes. And I'll tell you what, the way I live with that pressure, which is, it's not really immense, I guess, in the way that I'm saying it, is I'm doing the best I can. And I have told players before in those kind of situations that we're talking about of conflict, this is my decision to make, and I have to live with my decision. I understand you disagree with it, but it's my decision, right? That's a real life thing. Like when you have a boss or a manager, they have that authority to make those decisions, right or wrong. So the other thing too, I want to bring up with this team that I'm talking about, the high level team. I had a tournament recently where I had a player that just barely played in a big game. maybe got a few shifts the whole game, and they were mad, right? And so I knew they were mad. All right. So the first thing I did was say, hey, listen, let's talk. I understand you're mad. Let's give it a week and we'll talk. All right. This is a situation we were in. And when we got on the phone, there was a little bit of conflict. They were mad. They wanted to know why. And you know what? I didn't let my ego get in the way. When someone comes at you when you're in sports, you typically feel like you got to come right back. Yeah. I just kind of sat there. I think this is a big part of communication too, Jen. And I just listened. Get your feelings out, right? And then I explained to this player why I did not play them in that situation. And I'll tell you what, and you don't get this every time, there was a little bit of silence, and they said, that's all fair. They said, everything you just said is fair, right? Because think about it. I let the emotion get out of the way. I let them say what they wanted to say. And I'll even tell you all the situation because it's an interesting one where this player, it was a tournament. This player did not have a bad tournament, but they didn't have a great tournament either, right? And I was putting the players out that had a great tournament. And I told them that you didn't do enough to show me that I could play you in these big moments, right? So it's a tough situation where it's not like, well, you did all these things wrong, and that's why I didn't play it. Those are actually easy.
Yeah, absolutely.
Those are easy to tell a player. Well, I'm not confident in you because but when I said that you have to create a reason for me to put you out, keeping in mind, this is a high level. This is not youth sports. They understood that. And I'll tell you what, they have been unbelievable since then, right? Because I think we built trust. We understand how to communicate. They understood there is a method to the madness, right? This is the power of what communication can bring, right? So it's, Mike, to your point too, I never invite conflict. Like I'm not looking for conflict, but I think Jen makes a good point too, that that's inevitable and that's part of life. That's part of the ROI, right? Another statement I say, and then I'll give it back to you guys is, I tell my kids, there's two sides to it too. I tell coaches, hey, you got to meet the kids where they're at. But I also tell the kids, you got to learn how to talk to adults because that's a two-way street. You got to learn how we think too, right? And by the way, kids listening, if you learn how to talk to adults, you get a lot more.
Listen,
right, sorry, I'll throw it back to you guys.
Go hit it, Mike. I'll follow you.
No. Well, listen. So the way I look at all this, right, is that this is all these kind of, all these emotions and conflict and sport, and this is why we're competing, right? That's why we're like it really becomes like this side of, like, I tell parents all the time, like, listen, I completely agree that your son probably should have played more, but I have to look at the holistic part of the team. Like you're only watching your son. That's all you watch. And I
Yes,
know you say you
100%.
watch everyone else, but you're only watching your son. And I'm trying to work with all these different dynamics and working within how I feel. Like I can't let everybody have an opinion on the power play. If I did, we would go nowhere. Right. So somebody has to be able to say, well, I'm making the decision. Now, at the end of the year, I'll be evaluated. And if I wasn't a very good person to evaluate the power play, then I won't be the coach next year. Right. So it's just like, okay, well, depending on what role you're in and what level you're in, these kind of things, I think, as you mentioned earlier, that a beginning of building that culture that the buck stops with me. Please understand that this is how I feel about it. This is why I do it. But just understand, I can't take 15 different people's opinion. I have to go with what I feel. And the way I'm going to come to that conclusion is through this, and this, all these different
Mike, I got to say this too. And Jen, I want to hear your thoughts on this. The buck stops with me. It's my decision. Like these are phrases I think we need to use more. And like, again, people need to understand coaching is not by committee. It is my decision as the coach. I have been put into the leadership role. It's my decision. I need to live with that decision. Okay. That doesn't mean you can't make the right communication landscape to have conversations. But I think that's another thing parents have to understand is no, it's that person's decision. And you may disagree with them all season. That's their decision to make. And you got to tell your kids that is the person that makes the decision. So you have to respect that authority. You don't have to agree with it. There's a lot of caveats to that, but go ahead, Jen.
So I think there's a few things kind of about this. I think where I tend to see players go wrong is this idea of, well, I can do the same thing as Lee. Baby, I don't need you doing the same thing as Lee. I need you doing better. Right. Like I don't need you out there making the same mistakes. I need you to do better. And that's what I tend to see, right? It's like this idea of, well, I can just do the same thing. No, I need you to do better. And that aspect of it, like you have to come out and play better than someone else. If they're playing good, your greatness has to show up and you have to go above and beyond. Is it fair? No. But that's the reality of it. I think the second thing, I can't remember if it was Mike who said it, but like you're only watching one player. Yeah. And more than likely you're watching one player and overestimating them and underestimating everyone else. And so you're watching that player and your expectations on your player are way overestimated.
Right.
Their mistakes aren't as bad. Their things that they're doing are way greater. And you're not taking the totality of it. I think the next thing of it is that it's always easy when you're not in that main seat. I can make every single decision possible. But if I'm not in the main seat, I'm not the person responsible for the repercussions. So I did a podcast with Allison Kern, who's the AD at Cal State East Bay. And I have one called 5 with Fry. And it's a great podcast. And it's about when you're in the main seat, it's not about the great things. It's about, can you handle the consequences?
Right.
Everyone wants to be in that number one chair. They want to make the decisions because you want the glory. You don't want to deal with the consequences. You have to be willing to deal with the consequences. And many of the people that come up and want to doubt the decisions, they don't understand the totality of what you have to decide on because they have a small amount of education. Right. I tend to see a lot of people who they know only a little bit and they want to make a decision on the little bit, not understand you have a lot of bit of information, right? You have a lot of stuff. And so you have to be willing to take the consequences. And many people don't think about that. So when they come up and they want to talk about every decision you made, they're talking about it in row 34, not you sitting there knowing, right? Because we've all had to make that decision as a coach. That I know I can decide between this person who's been playing great, but now since they've dropped off, I can put this person, and this decision is the game. Right here is the game. And they're not sitting there thinking that their one decision is the game. And they don't think about that aspect of it. So there was a podcast I was looking at by Mel Robbins, and she interviewed Dr. Elaine Langer, and she was talking about like, stop making the right decision. It's a fascinating podcast, but essentially it talks about like how we always romanticize the other and these people romanticize the other decision. And the reality of it is that you don't know if you did that thing, if it would have went to crap, right? Well, if you would just put this person in, you don't know if you would put that person in and they would have went to crap. And so you have to be willing when it's my decision. And I understand that I get the glory and the consequences.
Right.
And yes, the players don't have to agree, because also potentially there is 20% that they have no clue about that we're basing our decision off of.
Right.
They think they know 100% and they don't. The parents think they know 100% and they don't. And there's a 20%, 30% part that we're not telling them that is critical in our decision making. And that's why it's like, you don't have to agree, but you have to respect it, because there's a lot that you maybe just don't know about.
Well, how about pro sports? I always love using pro sports, because you listen to, this is a good analogy for this. You listen to pro sports fans and they know how to fix the team.
They know
how to fix that team. If they drafted this guy in 2050, and it's funny because you just made me think of this. Fans see maybe 10% max, maybe of what's actually going on, right? And then on top of it, you got the media manipulating stuff to make you think certain things to get you to touch. You see so little. If you're a parent in youth sports and you show up to every practice and every game and everything, which I don't recommend, but if you do that, you're still seeing 30%, 40% of what's actually going on. You're not in the locker room. These are things you got to think about. You know, another one, Jen, you just brought up. Hold on, I got to say this because if I don't say things, I forget. For those of you know, but I've been doing this a while now. I've got decades in coaching, and what's funny is that you start to hear parents say similar things, right? Well, they're never going to make it if they can't figure out this hard work ethic stuff. Well, they just can't stay focused. They're never going to make it. They're never going to make it. First off, my antenna goes up when I hear parents saying, "You're never going to make it." Make what? What are you talking about? Right? And then we have these comparisons like Connor McDavid or Kobe Bryant about, man, they were up working at 4 a.m. That's the abnormal. Parents, if your kid has attention issues and work ethic issues, not saying it's fine. Don't take me wrong here, but I am saying it's pretty normal. Yes. It's pretty normal for a 8-year-old to not be paying attention. It's pretty
normal. Your 8-year-old doesn't even clean his room.
Right. I'm going to keep going up. It's normal for a 12-year-old to have some games they show up super motivated, and then the next game they're not. Super normal. This is super normal. It's also normal for a 16 or 17-year-old boy or girl to have some distracting thoughts every second of the day. These are all normal things.
Yes.
So the reason I'm bringing this up, we talk about meeting the kids where they're at, right? It's don't put any of that extra pressure on them. You can guide them. Hey, I noticed you didn't work hard last game. Parents, you should be having that conversation with your kid, but in a way of, yeah, you're 14. That happened to me when I was 14. Let's figure out some ways to work through this. This is part of communication. All right. If you're getting into the car saying you were shit tonight, you didn't work hard. I mean, what do you think what is the outcome of that going to be? Right. Because it may be your kid quitting the sport eventually.
Listen.
All right. Or never talking to you. All right. And I got to say, I get pissed too. I get pissed at my kids too. Guys, I'm human too. Right. I get frustrated when my daughter doesn't. It just happened this weekend. She had one game that was amazing, and the next game was just, it wasn't great. But I got to remind myself, she's 9. Okay, this is going to happen. But we did have a discussion, Jen. We did have a discussion about it, a good discussion of what changed. Right? How can we better prepare ourselves? What motivates you? It was a good conversation. She showed up to the next game. Right? So again, I'm monologuing again. I apologize. You know, everybody listening knows I'm very passionate about this stuff. But understand the normal behavior. Yeah,
it's true. Like these parents who are like,
never gonna make
kids are. Well, my kids work so hard all the time. No, they don't. No one does. Like, right. Bro, I'm 45, and I just be days like I'm like, just send one email, Jen. You got it. You can do this.
Get this coffee. Right? We can get the Starbucks if we send the email. We can do it.
Yes. And they put a Kobe Bryant on a pedestal, and it's like Kobe also was in the league at 18. Like, let's pipe down. Let's pipe down about who we're comparing
he's an enigma. And listen,
100%.
It's okay if your kid's not an enigma. Like, and again, I think most of the parents listening to this podcast totally agree with what we're saying. But you know, Mike and I joke about this too. We wish that they would glorify the fourth liners in the NHL who play for 1 year. And like they're exceptional people, right? Yeah. You know, go ahead, Mike. I know we talk about this one a lot.
No, I mean the best players in the world, and we're saying, "Oh, that guy stinks." I mean, he's the best player in the world. He's in the 1% of people in the world, and you're,
0.1%,
after you dropped your popcorn on row 345th of the stadium,
Yeah.
you can't make a comment. So, but so Jen, I am fascinated by locker rooms and interaction and players and all of this stuff that we're talking about from the coach's perspective and the parents' perspective. But really, where the sausage gets made, right, is in the locker room. It's where players, and I think your term, psychological safety, like it's like where players feel they can voice their concerns without repercussions and can speak about with their feelings to their teammates. Because at the end of the day, like even as a coach, like who cares how you feel about me? I need you to love your teammates. Like I need you to want to fight for your teammates. So can you just talk about that? What does that look like in a locker room that you work with, in a team room, or in a, where the players feel safe to criticize, communicate, advocate for each other within the room?
Yeah. So I just want to bounce back about what you were saying about being like the worst hockey player is a .01. Who is the basketball player that played for the Celtics that literally it was like him, and he would play any average Joe. And he was like, I'm closer to like Michael Jordan than you are to me. Right. I can't, what was his name?
I don't remember, but I remember that quote. Yeah.
Yeah. And so like he would play them all, and he was like, just because you see me and I'm on the bench doesn't mean I'm way better than you'll ever be, but I'm still closer to Michael Jordan. And that's the point of like, even the worst player in the NHL is still closer to the best player.
Yeah.
Yep. To Gretzky than you'll ever be. So just like that thought. But so when we're talking about that, I think the first thing that comes to mind to make a safer locker room is for everyone to understand y'all aren't going to like each other all the time.
That's a great point.
Like we have to throw it out of like I remember when I would be recruiting and have recruits and they'd be like, so how does everyone get along? Because we don't fight. And my other team, I'm like, girl, you lying. Like just you're lying. Everyone's going to hate each other at some point, right? Think about the honeymoon is preseason. The honeymoon is y'all love each other until that roster is made, until the starting lineup. And so I think the first thing is to understand you aren't going to like each other. There are going to be times you're rooming with someone, you're going to not like them. Like that's just life. You're not going to like each other. I think the second thing is that kind of, and I saw this from this woman on Facebook that I thought was really fascinating, is that coaches, we have to kind of teach our athletes how to not like each other. Right. Meaning, if I don't like Mike, it doesn't mean I get to roll my eyes every time he talks. It doesn't mean I isolate him. It doesn't mean I do these bad things to him. It doesn't mean I make everyone else not like him. It means I just don't like Mike. And so I think those are aspects of it. I think the next thing to help out with the locker room is teaching people to give and receive feedback. We don't teach that. So anytime there's feedback, it's taken as the ultimate criticism, and it's just super personal. And so we have to teach our athletes how to give feedback and how to receive feedback and be able to take it of like, Mike's giving me feedback, but it doesn't mean he hates me. And I'm not going to be sitting there the next day like, yeah, Mike told me that I did this drill wrong. And who's he think he is? No, a part of being on this team is that we give and receive feedback. And that is a part of our culture. And so we're training them how to give feedback one-on-one in a group, because that's where some of those pain points are of people don't understand it. I think the next thing is that really starting teaching, like if there's a concern with someone, how do we talk to them face to face? We don't triangulate and me be like, hey, I'm mad at Mike. Lee, can you talk to Mike for me? And we bring in all these other people. No, we learn how to go.
Jen. I would love to talk to Mike. No, I'm just kidding. Go,
anything, please. Yes.
No, but Jen, you're so right? Because like we want competition in the locker room. Like we want players fighting for positions. Like if you're not fighting for a position on the field or on the court or on the ice, then what the hell are you doing?
Guys,
I mean, you've got to battle.
I just wrote this down. I wrote down, show me a team without conflict, and I'll show you a team that's not going to win.
No. And like I need to have right? I need to have people who are battling. And a part of battling is that we are fighting for this position. And it doesn't mean that you're sitting there upset that I won. It's like your next thought should be, how do I beat Jen out? And the problem I'm seeing is that these parents are like, I saw one parent post was like, we came on this team and it's the beginning of season and she came out as a libero and now she's a DS. What do we do? let her fight for the libero spot. Like, I don't know what else to tell you.
Right.
These kids have to learn to
well,
battle
the problem now, right, is that at the college level, they just go in the portal and they move to another place where they can play. So like there is no conflict resolution. There is conflict. Get out.
Well, let's get some actionable. Let's get some actionable items, okay? That sometimes you can do, sometimes you can't. I remember when I was a freshman in college. I'll tell you the end of the story. Won a championship with this team. We did a thing called Good and Welfare, which I at the time hated. And we would have to sit in a circle and call each other out. The coach would make us call each other out on stuff, right? And you had to come to the meeting with something to talk about in front of the whole group on somebody else. Now, I would not do this at 10 or 12 years old. All right, this was college. I'm just giving it as an example. But we did it begrudgingly. And I'll tell you what, one of the closest teams I've ever been on after a while, because we learned how to just talk with each other about the things we didn't like. And some of the things were stupid. Like, hey, I didn't like the drinks this guy brought after the game. Seriously, like these were things like that. But when it comes to kids, you can create a version of that, right? And coaches, it's about identifying. If you see two kids fighting on the ice, or even not verbally fighting, but like pushing each other, that's an opportunity for you as a coach. What's going on here? A lot of times what we do is, hey, you two, stop it. That's not what you want them to do. You got to pick and choose. What's going on? Talk to me. Well, he did this and he did this. Okay. Well, why? What's the problem here? All right. Here's the thing I say to athletes sometimes. Sometimes the older athletes. But do you both believe that you're trying to do what's best for the team right now? Usually the answer is yeah. Okay. And follow me here. There's two sides to this. Usually the answer is, well, I think I'm doing what's best for the team. Okay. Well, can we agree on that? That you guys are just trying to push each other. Sometimes the answer is no. I'm putting myself first. All right.
That's a good one. Okay, I like that.
Yeah, well, it's important to ask questions like that, right? I always talk about trust and the teammates self mentality in that order, right? I think coaches need to arm themselves with the ability to ask questions. Are you putting the team first? Are you both doing what you think's best for the team? When I deal with conflict resolution, that is where I start. Because, Jen, to your point, you can have two athletes, completely different sides of something, both think they're doing what's best for the team. And I'll tell you what, that's a better place to start a conversation, because most people can understand, okay, we disagree. You can go somewhere from that. Right? If 100%. It's just, I hate you. Right. And
that's why you see like sports fans, or somebody watches like a video of two teammates having a fist fight on the ice. Right. And they're like, oh, that team's never gonna. They're gonna lose. These guys hate each other. I'm like, no, those guys are like best friends. Like they're like I used to laugh. Like I used to tell people all the time. Like I have three brothers growing up. Right. I fought against my brothers harder than any competition I've ever had. I mean, blood, broken bones. I mean, it full out fights, competition for everything.
That's why we're a radio show.
No, I'm just kidding. But that competition bred the best out of all of us. Like, it's just like when you see that on the ice, like there's obviously there's lines, right? But Jen, your point was, yes, have the conflict, but then learn how to give it and take it, but learn that it's not personal. It's a way where I can express my feelings. I'm not going to bottle it up. I'm not going to say, oh, so-and-so and hide in the corner and be in these little fractions of groups. We're all going to expose it. We're all going to have this conversation, and we're all going to resolve it. And I think this is where teams can move on. And I think it's the coaches and the players that allow that to become little cliques. And you see that all the time, and like parents in the stands, or you see that click and this click and this click, and you could honestly see where the team's going to go.
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to say this too, is that the best teammates I've ever had and the best coaches I've ever had, I didn't say best friends I ever had, pushed me harder than anyone. And sometimes, this is kind of an age-old adage. How would you say that? I look back to my really high-level days. The people that pushed me the most were my opponents. Yes. Right? Like the person I wanted to beat, right? So it just shows you the motivation here. And again, all this translates to real life. We're talking about ROI of youth sports. I mean, we're making it very, very sport-centric right now, gang. But, the kids are going to deal with this stuff in real life. And I wanted to say this earlier. For the most part, our kids are growing up just like we did in a very different technological age where they can text and they can hide behind a username. Yes. All
Yes.
right. And that's what they're growing up with. It's not their fault. All right.
Nope.
That's the reality. And again, our generation had something similar things, right? So I think, and Jen, I want your thoughts on this. When it comes to team communication, right? The chats, there's parent emails, there's digital communication, there's texting. I mean, there's so many different ways to communicate that it can create confusion or even tension. Because when you think about text communication, I always try and warn people about this. There's no emotional connotation. So we will assign emotion to a text based on sometimes how we're feeling. If we're in a bad mood, we might read a text completely wrong, right? So the question is, what boundaries or what best practices do you recommend for the families and the coaches and the players and the people involved in digital communication?
So what you're saying is 100% true. I will not argue over text. I won't. Right? Like I had to have a conversation with my an app developer, and I got a text from him. I called him because I'm not going to have, there are certain things we have to start understanding that should not happen over text. And just what you said, if you're in a bad mood and someone says okay instead of okay with exclamation point, you're like, what's their problem? What's
Right.
going on?
Right.
Right? Like, are you mad?
Or just
No, I just
K.
said, right? Or just K. Like
K.
whatever we're feeling or what we think about the situation, we assign to it. And
Yeah.
now we're even more upset about it because of what we've deemed the emotion is behind it. So I think the first thing when it comes to communication is it's both and, right? Yes, I agree that our kids know a digital world where all communication is through that. And we still have to teach them to engage as humans. But that can't be our excuse of well, that's just how they're raised. Yeah, but they still need to be able to engage like humans and have conversations. And we have to be willing to do that because we also have to acknowledge as adults, it's so much easier to do stuff through text. I'm not seeing your eyes, I'm not feeling you, I'm not the emotion. It's so much easier I send the text to Lee about how I'm feeling, and then I don't have to answer him. Or I
Right.
can answer him on my
Or leave you
time.
on red.
Leave you on red.
Yeah, I think my son actually gets offended when I actually call, like because he's like, I just texted you. Why would you call
Yeah.
me? I'm like, no, I'm just calling you because I need to have this conversation quickly, and I
Yep.
need to make sure that you and I understand
Yes.
each other. And I think it
Yes.
goes the same way when parents are texting coaches or you're in these group chats. I mean, there's a lot of programs that dread the group chats because they could go in a really bad way, right? I think so. Is the conversation more about we have to have more face-to-face meetings, and I think as we've talked about a million times, right, we have to make sure we set the parameters of communication out very clearly prior to opening up these chats and these text messaging chains
Yep.
so that people kind of know where we're coming from with these. Like, okay, I need like I don't have a text message chain about last game's lineup. Like that's a nightmare and a disaster for everyone,
Yeah. So let
right?
me
Because then it gets very personal.
yeah, so let me kind of hit on a few things. You like what you said, Mike, was on point. Like I need to make sure that you are understanding what I'm saying because I'm texting. Now I have to wait maybe 5-10 minutes to get an answer. Now I'm annoyed. And now I'm like, hey, did you get my text? I need an answer.
Right.
Now that starts that effect versus me picking up the phone and just say, like, I am notorious for picking up the phone or FaceTiming my friends. Like I just am. And I think we have to get people used to the conversations of that. I think the next thing regarding that is parents who are upset will use every communication medium possible to get to the coach. Right? They're upset with the lineup. So they
True.
will do text, they will send a TikTok, they will send a Snapchat, they will send a
Or my
Facebook Messenger.
email.
They will send an email. They will send an Instagram message. They will send every communication method possible to get to the coach. And when they don't get what they deem as the appropriate answer, they're going to get more upset. Well,
Right.
I Instagrammed the coach and I saw that they're online and they're not answering me. How dare they? I pay, right? It comes back to that. Because I paid, I feel like I should have
Right.
access to them at all times in all ways. And that's not true. And so, kind of going back to that question, the coaches should really put around here are the parameters. I will only answer through email and setting up a calendar appointment.
Well, I'm going to
And
say a
so
few things too. Yeah.
yeah,
No, go ahead, Jen.
there was
I thought. Yeah.
a cheerleading gym owner that had these great kind of prompts, and it was like, you have contacted me about this issue on this platform. Please note all communication needs to go through email. This text message will now be deleted. That's the type of thing you have to put the parameters around it. I've acknowledged your text. I've told you that this isn't the right parameter. Please contact me this way. Here is my link. And so that's the type of thing that coaches and admin need to do to be proactive, because what happens is that an angry parent wants to go back and forth in the Facebook message. That's never going to go well. If they're contacting them in Facebook or Instagram, it's never going to go well. They're wanting that back and forth and chat and riled up to screenshot and to send to people. No. You want to talk about this issue? We need to talk about face-to-face with your kid there. Because
and it appeases
it's almost as
too.
bad. It's almost as bad as talking to a parent at a bar at 11:30 at night on a tournament weekend. Like, you just don't do it. Just don't go there. Don't get out of there and run away.
Well, I'm going to say a few things here too. Like, with the parents, they're going back and forth. It's not even limited to parents. It's just people, right? And look, I'm guilty of this too. When you're in an argument and you're heated, a lot of things could be happening. You may just want to win the argument, or you may be waiting.
But let me stop you, Lee. The problem right there is that they're not trying to solve a problem. They're trying to be in an argument.
Yeah. Well, Jenna, that's where I'm heading, right? Is that you're so focused on winning the argument, you're not listening, you're not hearing, and you're not in a position to have a two-way communication. Conducive. Adhesive is a totally different thing. Conducive to finding a solution. So, one of the things I wrote about a while ago was that when they removed teaching cursive from schools, which I think they have put back in schools now, I said they should have replaced that with a social etiquette course about the dangers of typing from behind a screen and how etiquette should work with that. Now, I use the word etiquette loosely here, but just teaching people, when you text someone, there is no emotion, even if you put an emoji attached to that. People will respond to it the way that they're thinking. The other thing too is this, I wrote this down. Texting gives you time to think, which can be very good or very bad, depending on how it's going, right? If I'm a coach and I get a text, I'm not going to discuss with you most likely anything over text. Jen, you actually said it to it. I'm not going to give you the opportunity to screenshot what I'm saying and put it out of context, which will happen. All right. 100%. Especially when I'm assuming it's a private conversation. There's no private text conversations, by the way. Right. The other thing too is this. I want to have the face-to-face conversation as the coach. All right. Because my coaches want to coach. I want to teach. I want to hear. I want to learn. It's a really cool example here. The other night I was doing some team building with the team. I was talking about how great questions lead to great answers. And a lot of time, great questions will invite, an opposition, right? It'll invite conflict. And so I said to the team, I'm going to put myself out there. I'm going to say, my goal is to help build the best team possible here. These are my methods. Are there any things you guys can think of that I can do my job better? Right. And one of the kids said, well, you're very unclear sometimes with your directions for the drills.
Oh, wow.
Okay. Now this was good. All right. Ooh, and he said, maybe that's something you can work on. I said, now that's a great question. And what I said to him was that, and this is not fake. I said, I am purposely vague with the instructions because I'm trying to inspire you guys to think and be creative on how to find a solution. And I said, here's an example of how I did that and how you succeeded. Then I said, do you understand that? Does that make sense? And he said, oh, now I get it. Now that's a great conversation.
Yep.
Because I didn't know he felt that way, right? I mean, I know what I'm doing with the vague questions, but he said, oh, that's a concern because I'm not getting the information I need. And I confirmed that. Now, if this is done through text, it's why aren't you giving us better explanations? And I write back, you don't need better explanations. Then he texts that to the whole team. Coach doesn't want to work and give us explanation. It's out of control. And a 15-second conversation, we both learned. That's good communication. So don't bring your anger to the conversations. Don't bring your ego to the conversations. You really got to check that, all right? One of the things I work on all the time, and again, this is a human thing. It's not just a hockey thing, is I always say if I'm emotionally compromised, and you've got to be aware of that, my friends. You got to be aware if you're angry, you're upset, something happened, you're rushing, right? That you're like in a mode where you got to be getting somewhere. You should constantly be asking yourself, is this the right time to communicate with someone? I will avoid people if I know I'm in a bad mood because I'm not going to communicate well. All right. I got to say it too, that's not always possible, right? There are times you're going to have to communicate, but audit yourself before you start throwing shade at people.
I think
Go ahead, Mike.
I think I used to have a rule, when I would be before texting, when you have a family meeting or a parent meeting, and before you could throw the emoji with the little kid with the hair blowing up and fire, like to me, like I always knew like the conversation was going in a bad place, and I would end it if the parent like started swearing at me.
Yeah.
Like if the parent started F-bombing, I'd be like, okay,
done here.
Now we're done, and let's revisit this again.
Yeah.
And you don't get to do that in a text message. Like it just steamrolls.
Right.
Like so you can't manage that piece because you're not face to face. You're not in a place where you could see that the person is visibly getting upset. There are great text messengers that can send you messages all day that are really, really negative, but they don't sound too bad.
Right.
Right. And then you find out like, oh my God, this person's like left the program. Like, so it's you cannot gauge any kind of, piece of that unless you're there live with them. But then you got to be careful. I mean, from the coach's perspective, you too, like to at least point is you need to know, oh, this probably isn't a good time for me to approach the situation.
You just lost.
Let me wait.
Not a good time.
Let me wait. And then I'll handle this in a way where I can have more control over it so that it doesn't get into a bad place.
Yeah, I want to hit on kind of a few things of what you said. The thing also, Lee, about you opening up the space for the questions is that your athletes are able to see how you react. Because a lot of people talk about, I have open door, you can trust me. And then they ask the question and immediately it's defensive of like, I do this for a reason, blah, 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 blah.
I'm not being paid to be here. I'm a volunteer. How dare you talk to me like that? Yeah.
And then you see all it takes is
I hope you sat the kid. I hope you sat him.
Right. Like then what you tend to see is that the kid will look at the other kid and everyone's glancing at each other. And now you've shut it down versus here's the reason why I've done it. But like, Mike, 100%. When you time and space, location and time, like those are all so important. And many people don't think about that. And like before I was the person who was like, I had to have every conflict handled immediately. And now I'm a person of like, oh, I know I'm going to see them next week. We'll just have the conversation then. I know we have our monthly meeting coming up. We'll just have the conversation then because I don't need to have it. I know we're going to solve it. And I think so many times people have this fear that the conflict won't be solved. And so they have to have it immediately. And like you said, Mike, it's important that a coach knows right now, I have a sick kid. Me and my partner are battling it out. I don't have the space right now to have this conversation. But what some coaches can do is just admit that. Be like, hey, John, I know you want to talk about your playing time right now. I have to be home in 15 minutes and I won't be able to give it the space it needs. So can we have the conversation? Can you come to practice 15 minutes early? Can we at the end of next practice, Kim? But I want to have the conversation with you. So can we have it? And what you're doing right there is you're letting them know the importance of what they're saying, that you have time for them, but you're also showing them that sometimes everything can't be handled immediately. Yeah. And let me just kind of add on to that. Please, is the last thing is that if you have someone who's trying to rush you into the conversation, that's not a good indication of what the conversation is going to be.
100%.
If someone's not like, hey, okay, Mike, cool, I understand. We'll talk later. If they're like, no, let me just say it right now. Let me and they know that you don't have the headspace and time, but they want to make sure to get it out. That to me is really problematic, especially if it's in front of a lot of people. The people who only want to handle conflict in front of a group aren't really interested in handling the conflict. They want to make it a spectacle. Exactly. Right. They almost want to make it like, what's the old story? Like West Side Story. Everyone's got their leather jacket on. Right. Like, okay, let's do this. They want to make it.
Hey, Warriors, come out to play.
I mean, this is exactly the reason why you walk out of car dealerships with a car you can't afford, right? Because you get bullied in, like they just on you. I'm ready. I'm not ready. No,
you
know what? Hell of it. I'll just buy the car.
Why don't you sit in the front seat? Why don't you just
Look at this feature. Look at this.
But it's just like a parent with a player, and it's just like all of a sudden, like maybe you might I know I've seen coaches time and time again just say, oh, you know what, you're right, we're gonna put you on the power play. Yeah. And I'm like, but you don't want to do that. Like that should that player and that parent pressuring you into those situations because you just want to give them an answer is not the answer. And but I think to your point though, that face to face, that when the time is right, when I make the time for you, we all have to respect those boundaries. Whether you're a player or a coach.
Yeah.
And like I remember I used to send out notices, and this is before I had kids, and I would be like, oh, hey, I need to know for practice tonight if we can do this, and I would expect an answer back,
Right.
like in 15 minutes. And here, I find out, oh, that guy's a lineman. He's up on the pole, when he doesn't have a phone with him. This guy's a stockbroker. He's not allowed to have his phone with him. This guy's a dentist. He's probably working all day.
Doctor,
all of a sudden, you're expecting, we're sitting in a coach's room, putting together these grand plans and want information, but we don't respect the fact that other people are not
because
on
we're
our
all
timeline.
living in our own little worlds. And again,
Right.
when you can become conscious of that, it helps. Like a couple quick things. We're starting to run out of time here. I want to talk about the psychology behind this for everybody listening. Maybe we can kind of all grow together here. Okay. Jen, you brought up a really good scenario, whereas I just have to tell you right now. Okay. When you are feeling the pressure of a burden, and what I mean by pressure of a burden is I feel like my kid or myself have been wrong and I need to get this off my chest. Okay. It's hard, but it's okay to live with that burden for a minute and maybe compartmentalize it and think about it. I think
journal.
Which you've been talking about that all episode, actually, right? Journaling is so important. Be okay living with that feeling for a few moments. I think that we're so quick to just offload the burden.
Oh my gosh.
Let me get it to the next. Let me tell the coach what you're doing is you don't want to feel the way you're feeling, and you believe if you say whatever you got to say, you're not going to feel it anymore. It's okay to sit with that feeling. Now, I'm going to tell you this from a coaching standpoint, where I've got to make really hard lineup decisions. Okay. And I've been in positions where I need to tell a player something. And I've recognized now that when I get that, or even in my job as a leader of, okay, I really want to tell this person this, I've learned to just take a moment. And look, a moment can literally be 10 seconds sometimes. All right. Or it could be 10 days. Like, depends on the situation. But I've learned to sit with it and really think about it. And what is the best way to do this? Because I don't want to use the word panicked, but I am eager to get the burden of the thought off of my chest and get it away from me. So Jen, you said it right. I do like to write things down. Here's what I'm thinking. Here's how I'm doing it. Look, parents, players, coaches, there's not every situation you can do this. I acknowledge that. All right. But if you're in a situation, you should be asking yourself, do I have a couple seconds here to think about what I'm doing before I do it? Number two, I wanted to bring this up.
Can I push you on that though? How many situations is there an actual urgency that the thing needs to be said?
Well, that's a great point. Very
right.
few.
If we're not talking about safety, if we're not like mental fit, like I think that's the thing about it is that in reality, there are very few situations that they have to say this immediately.
Right. I'll take it broader, Jen. I'll take it actually broader for you. Okay. When we work on present moment awareness, like the now, one of the things we always teach is, most of your problems don't exist in the present moment. And it's I forgot what the equation was, but it was like, if you asked yourself constantly in the present moment, what is the biggest problem right now? You typically don't have one. Now, with that said, to answer your question, there are some life moments where there is a major problem happening in the present moment. And just so to put context on that, you have just received news that you have a major disease. You've lost a loved one. All right. Someone you care about has been hurt. Those are life moment, present moments that will hurt you in the moment. But with that said, they're very rare. If you think about how long you're on this planet, there's very few of those moments that happen in the present moment. So to answer your question, almost nothing that you're dealing with is a present problem. You do have the time. And again, if your problem is ice time, that happened in the past and you're trying to get a solution for the future. It's not happening right now. So people getting a grip on that is very important. I love that you asked me that.
What you said, like, I actually am going to sit with that because I think like what you said is like, I see my kid not playing. Instead of me sitting with it, it's like, I have to go up and be like, I don't usually do this, but I need to, right? And I like the famous last words, I never do this, but yet you do this so well. For someone who never does this, you do this really well.
You've been practicing
And
this in your mind, haven't you?
right. And so like
Yeah.
they are like, I have to go talk about this immediately. And when you try and say this is not the time, right? We have the 12-hour rule, 24-hour rule. No, I need to talk about it now.
Right.
Why? Like there's
But
no
we will
actual
walk
reason.
away from you parents if you do
Yes.
that. I have no
Yes.
problem doing that. The other thing too, Jen, just to say this again, it's coming from a place of love. Parents, you're doing this because you love your kids and you want the best for your
Yeah.
kid. But I would make the statement that if you do love your kid, so go to your kid first and talk with them. See if you can have them advocate for themselves. We talked about that on this episode too. Your kid should be the one reaching out to the coach always. All right, really always. All right. Now again,
Always.
if we're talking bullying, I'm talking about the sport. If you have a severe bullying situation or something like that, parents, you should be involved, and coaches should be getting the parents involved. Okay, but generally, no. Look, the last thing I want to say again, we do have to close this out. It's a great conversation, Jen. We will have you on for part 2. Is I want to say this to everybody listening, all the parents. Look, coaches, we have bad days too.
Mm-hmm.
All right. I have had practices where I've got done and I was like, I did not do a good job today. It happens. We have bad days too. So, I think there's this just assumption we're going to be perfect every time we step on the ice for every kid. We have bad days. Now, I strive my hardest as a coach to never let that happen. I promise you all that. I know Mike is the same way, but it happens. All right. There are things, or every coach listening will nod at this. You've got this great drill that's going to help your team, and you're excited, and you set it up, and it's dog shit. just doesn't work.
Mm-hmm.
It just doesn't work, and you feel horrible about it. We have bad days too. All right. So just keep that in the back of your mind. Now, if you've seen 6 practices in a row that are horrible, that's not acceptable. All right. But if there's one bad practice, grace, people. Give us some grace. We're doing the best we can. You don't know what's going on in our lives either.
Yeah, 100%. And I think the thing about it is that parents expect a level of perfection from coaches. And if
Right.
not, they do flamethrowers, right? Like I see in the
Right.
volleyball parents group
Volunteers. They're
how,
volunteers.
right? Like, or they're not making that much, like the amount of work that's going in to help your kid. And like they're just putting flamethrowers in there about these coaches. And it's like
Right.
people, like you said, people get to have bad days. And kind of the last thing I want to jump onto that is parents, you have got to give grace to young coaches.
Yeah.
I see so many parents who they are on like a lower team and they have a young coach and they're like, oh my God, I have this new coach out of college. She doesn't know anything.
Yeah.
And you're just going after them. How do you think coaches become old coaches? Is they're young coaches?
She doesn't know anything.
She doesn't.
Okay.
She's learning.
Yeah, it's like that's okay.
It's okay.
Yeah.
And fortunately, the team is her guinea pig, is his guinea pig. They have to learn. And I know you want your coach to always have the former national team coach who's won several championships and who walks around practice with an Olympic medal around their neck.
Right.
I get that that's the coach you want. And that might not be the best coach for your kid because the expectations that coach has, your kid cannot meet at this time.
Well,
they actually need the young coach who is figuring out, because your kid who is on the 15-8 team is figuring their crap out too. And both of y'all are figuring it out together. So have grace for young coaches.
I'm going to take it even broader. In any youth sport, the coaches are learning, the players are learning, parents, you're learning how to be parents. I don't care how many kids you have. The refs are learning. Everyone's learning.
Yes.
In youth sports. All right. And here's the kicker. Even in professional sports, everyone is still learning. That part never ends. And I was going to say this again. These coaches are volunteers trying to figure out. Mike and I have made ourselves 100 errors coaching. 100 errors. All right. Sometimes multiple times over. All right. We still are trying to learn. All right. For those you can't watch, Mike's laughing right now. Just rolling in those $100 bills, both of them. All right.
Oh,
Jen,
but
listen.
But also, like I guess last point on that is the only way you get the expert coach is that they go through those losses. The only way the
100%.
coach becomes the great coach is that they put in the wrong lineup incorrectly and screwed up. They made the wrong decision.
Agreed.
They sat the kid too long. They kept the kid too early. That's how the
poorly.
coaches, they communicate poorly. You draw up the most amazing drill and it sucks to high heaven. You have to learn that way. That's how you become excellent.
100%. Look, there's a quote I always say, Jen, that is good coaches know everything. Great coaches know nothing. right? Because it's going to be constantly changing. All right, listen, this has been fun. I want to shout out your book before we go real quick. I'd be remiss if I didn't. Love the title. The title is I Said No, How to Have a Backbone and Boundaries Without Being a Jerk. That kind of sums up this episode too. Tell us about the book. Tell us obviously where people can find it, and then we'll close this out.
Yeah. So I wrote the book. It actually has reflection questions in there. I tell personal stories. It's a really quick read. My goal of it is to give people a better understanding of setting boundaries, self-advocating. Because we are taught that you shouldn't do it. We're taught if you're selfish, you're bad. We're taught if you, say no. And in reality, that's how you stay a healthy human, is that you know how to say no, you pick your battles, and you're able to fiercely advocate for yourself. And so that's my hope for the book. You can find it Amazon, Barnes & Noble, if you want an autographed copy of my Herbie Hancock. Some of y'all might not be old enough to know that. If you want my Herbie Hancock, you can go to jenfrytalks.com. You can buy a signed copy, and you will get stickers and a bookmark.
Ooh,
so
listen,
yeah, the holidays are coming up. The holidays are coming up.
As an author myself, please go to her website to buy the book.
There's
multiple reasons I'd want you to do that. Look, people, we all love Amazon. If you want to support the person, go to the website. That's with almost everything. Okay.
Please.
Amazon overlords, if you're listening, we appreciate you. Please do not cancel my show. All right. I do want to read this. It's again, the book is I Said No, How to Have a Backbone and Boundaries Without Being a Jerk. I also love it says the no bullshit guide to setting up boundaries, speaking up, and being unbothered by other people's feelings. That's a book we all need to read. I think we all need to read if you've been listening to this. Last thing I want to say, and I'm really proud of this, that, we had Jen on, obviously Dr. Jen, right? Jen is not super involved in the game of ice hockey. And the reason I'm saying that is because it's so important that we bring in multiple perspectives from different places, different backgrounds, different sports, different experiences to learn. I have learned from this episode. Mike, I'm sure you have too, right? We're talking about communication. We can't silo ourselves only in the hockey world. Parents, I know you don't. I know we play multiple sports. We got to get these different perspectives. And as we learned today, Jen, doesn't matter what your background is. The communication stuff applies. Everywhere you go.
100%.
All right. So I don't want to say no, but I said no. We have to end the episode now.
Darn it.
Jen,
this has been so fun.
It has been. I appreciate you being here. Mike, any final words before I let this off?
No, I think you're absolutely right. It's whatever sport it is, parents are parents and players are players, and competition is competition. We all get heated, whether it's volleyball or football or ice hockey. And it's just a great, anything, tennis, golf. So anytime we're putting our time and our money into something, we want results from that. There's going to be, there's going to be emotion, and I think just on both sides, learning how to use that emotion for good, is going to help everybody involved, especially obviously the kids that we have under the tutelage of the coaches and the parents. Those are the really ones, I think we need to protect the most.
I love use emotion for good. I think we forget that our emotions are kind of one of the things that uniquely makes us human. Not that other beings don't have them, but that's one of the things that's special about our species. So now that I've taken this to the galactical level, appreciate all of you listening to this episode of Our Kids Play Hockey. Please check out Jen Fry. Again, it's jenfrytalks.com. Grab her book, I Said No. We're going to do that and support her. And again, the link will be in the show description. All right. Also, if you have questions for Jen, if you have questions for us, if you have episode ideas, email us, team@ourkidsplayhockey.com, or once again, click the link in the description accompanying this episode. Let us know who you are, where you're from. Ask us anything. We've got a lot of mailbag episodes coming up. This is a community conversation because we practice what we preach here. For Jen, for Mike, I'm Lee. We'll see you on the next episode of Our Kids Play Hockey, everybody. Take care.
Bye.
Have fun. Skate on. We hope you enjoyed this edition of Our Kids Play Hockey. Make sure to like and subscribe right now if you found value wherever you're listening, whether it's a podcast network, a social media network, or our website, ourkidsplayhockey.com. Also, make sure to check out our children's book, When Hockey Stops, at whenhockeystops.com. It's a book that helps children deal with adversity in the game and in life. We're very proud of it. But thanks so much for listening to this edition of Our Kids Play Hockey, and we'll see you on the next episode.